Hello friends, I welcome you again to IAS at Speed of Light, and now we are moving ahead from ancient history part to medieval history. Last time, as you might have remembered, we have studied the King Harsha. So after the death of King Ashoka, we considered it as in medieval history. Medieval history, if broadly we divide it, covers these three basic parts. The early medieval history, which is from 8th to 12th century AD. The Delhi Sultanate from 12th to 16th century AD. And third, the Mughals, which are from 16th to 18th century AD, as you can read on the presentation as well. So we will start our medieval history, the part of medieval history with early medieval history, that is from 8th to 12th century AD. During this part, we have to focus on two different things. The first would be the Indo-Arab trade. During this Indo-Arab trade, we would see how the Islam entered into the subcontinent, Indian subcontinent, and plus further moving on to that, we will see the first Arab invasion into the subcontinent, and then further we will see the invasion of Turks and Afghans to India and the background behind their invasions. Were those invasions really religiously based, or there were some other different reasons? We will focus on that. The second thing which we would focus would be the tripartite struggle within the subcontinent. Right, so this period between 750 AD to 1200 AD, it is referred to as an early medieval period of Indian history. Earlier historians used to mark it as a dark phase because it was during this time that we would see the whole country was divided into numerous regional states which were obviously busy fighting with each other. But now the more recent scholarships, now most recent historians, they have indicated that though that time the subcontinent was politically divided, but though India witnessed a growth of new and rich cultural activities in the field of art, literature and language, and in fact some of the best specimens of temple architecture that we would see and the Indian literature belong to this period. So now, thus far from being treated as a dark age by the earlier historians, it is now considered as a bright and vibrant phase of Indian history. This whole period, again, we tend to divide into two different parts. First part is from 750 to 1000 AD, and other would be obviously from 1000 to 1200 AD. The first phase, that is the 750 to 1000 AD phase, it was marked by the growth of three important political powers in India. These were the Pratiharas in the north side, in the North India, the Palas in the eastern side, and that is Bengal and the Bihar, and the Rashtrakutas in the southern India. Now these three powers, regional powers, they were constantly fighting with each other with the aim to set up their control on the Gangetic plain in the northern India. And this armed conflict among these three powers in history is known as tripartite struggle. Tripartite struggle, and we would study about these three powers in a bit detail from some time from now. Now, moving to the second phase, that is 1080 to 1200 AD, we notice the breakup of these powers, and the breakup of these major regional powers, it again resulted in the rise of many smaller kingdoms all over the country. For example, in northern India, the disintegration of the Tihara Empire brought to the forefront the various Rajput states which were under the control of different Rajput dynasties such as Chauhans, Chandelas, Parmas, etc. And these Rajput dynasties, the concept of Rajputs, the origins of Rajputs, again we will try to touch upon that in this lecture. Now these Rajput dynasties at that time, they were the actual people who fought and resisted the Turkish attacks from the northwestern India, which were led by the Muhammad of Ghazni and the Muhammad of Ghori in 11th and 12th century. But they had to yield ultimately as they failed to stand unitedly against the invaders. Now moving to another aspect of this century, this whole period, it is the Indo-Arab trade. It's a very important part to understand the overall background of the various invasions that took place into the subcontinent at the time. So, starting with Indo-Arab trade, this Indo-Arab trade relations, these relations even existed before the birth of Islam, that is before the birth of the Prophet Muhammad. So these are very ancient relations between the Indians and the Arabs. The Arabs, who are the middlemen, they do not produce anything. Indians used to produce, Arabs used to come and take their products and ship it to overseas part, the northeastern Africa, from there to Egypt, and then further in eastern Mediterranean. From there the Italians and Greeks would come and they would take these products to further Europe. So this pattern we have to keep in mind always. The Indians were the producers, the Arabs were the shippers, and the Europeans of the African countries, they were the consumers. Now let us see the background, how these Arab influence in the world trade and business increased. This was a time around 400 to 500 AD. 400 to 500 AD. And this was a time when there was a great war going on between the Persian and the Greeks. The Greek family which ruled the Eastern Europe, particularly the Middle Eastern Europe, they were Byzantines. Byzantines versus Sasanians. So Byzantines were the Greeks and the Sasanians were the Persians. So there was a constant fight which was going on between the Byzantines, the Greeks, and the Sasanians, which were the Persians. Let us see the area where this war was going on. So this whole area, this whole area, it was under the war. Now these wars Between the Greek and Persian, it also took the religious meaning because by that time the Byzantine group, the Greek group, they were converted to Christianity, and they wanted to protect and spread Christianity in the Middle East and Eastern Europe, which actually brought them closer to the Persian Sassanid Empire, which had its own religion by then, which is actually a very old and ancient religion known as the Zoroastrians. You might have heard about that. So this tussle between these two Greeks and Persians, actually it was a tussle between the two races. But finally, what it did was it disrupted the great Silk Road business between China and Rome. I think you must be aware about the Silk Road. So this is a map of Silk Road is emerging from China, then passing to Taklamakan Desert, then to the top of India, to Afghanistan, right to the Rome. But this fight, now this whole land route is disturbed. This whole land route, so the land route was disturbed. So what it did was it gave an opportunity for overseas trade, that is trade by the oceans, because we saw the land route to India was disrupted because of the constant warfare. However, their other sea communications presented a greater opportunity to those people who could use the seas, which are the Gulf, the Persian Gulf and the Red Sea. If in the map you can see, this is the Persian Gulf and this is the Red Sea. So this route, it is blocked because this whole area was under warfare, and Arab sits over here. So we see Arabs now as the middlemen. Now this also helped in the rise and growth of commercial towns like Makkah and Medina on the Red Sea. This is my Red Sea. And these were not only the Red Sea towns, and there were other towns on the other side of the the Arabian Peninsula. This is the Persian Gulf. Persian Gulf. So we see different towns, they came into assistance because of this new trade and business that took now the different shape. Now this was a time which coincided like this, the growth of business and commerce through overseas by seas, and the development of different commercial towns on the shores of Red Sea and the Persian Gulf. It coincided with the birth of Islam, and that is the birth of Prophet Muhammad. Let me go to the main slide. Now it coincided with the birth of Islam. Prophet Muhammad was born in 750 AD and he died in 632 AD. Now this whole activity, it coincided with the business and commerce, it coincided with the birth of Islam, that is the birth of Prophet Muhammad. The Prophet of Muhammad, he was born in a merchant family in Makkah, and then later he moved on to Medina where he died. So this whole business is not just giving birth to the new commercial towns, but it is also giving birth to a new religion, Islam. So from 700 AD till this day, most of the business between India or America, Europe, or between China and America and Europe is based on ocean. And there is a natural theory which says at the time when the road business was carried out, if you could control the roads, you would control everything. Similarly, when the business became overseas, then the nations or the countries who would control the seas, they would control everything. And now the business is moving from oceans to the air. This is a sort of generalization of the facts. Now this Indo-Arab trade relations, it sounds really very strange, in which more Arab people they came to the south and western India than the Indians going to eastern or western Arabia. And the reasons are simple actually, because why Hindus could not engage in this business, there was a Hindu religion ban since the stages of the rise of Hinduism, and through the great sacred books of Vedas, they have a sea fear, and the use of sea it is not very known. Because the Aryans who established Hinduism were the people of land who had nothing to do with the sea, so they did not know anything about the sea. Another reason behind the Hindus not doing this business was the rise of both Hinduism and Buddhism as the predominant religions in India, because sea did not become a major source of food for these both religions, as they both were vegetarians. So later on, those nations who are living on the coastal area of India, they will become a little bit relaxed or liberal, and will use sea for trade and business, and even catch fish and eat it. Another reason was that we know in India everybody do not do business. Only few did it, and so most of the people stayed away from the sea. And since from the earlier times the Indo-Aryans they remained confined to the foothills of Himalayas, and that is why they did not learn anything about the use of sea or conquering other places by using as rest of the European countries that we would see they would do later. Another reason like why so many Arabs in India and not vice versa, not many Indians in Arab, it was that the trade and business profession in India it was confined to only one caste, the Vaishyas. So moving ahead, giving us some sort of introduction of how actually Islam got introduced into the subcontinent. Another interesting thing, if we can discuss here, is in India from the time immemorable, the external trade has always been in the hands of outsiders, like the Persians, the Turks, the Greeks, and now we see the Arabs coming into the picture. And these outsiders take Indian products to different places, Africa, Europe, and sell these products there. And now we will see it will be coming into the hands of Arabs, and it will go for a long time, and later we would see Europeans join into this, and then Britishers. Things were the same till 1947, we know, when we got independence and we took everything in our hand. Okay, coming back and focusing on the Indo-Arab trade, the business, this whole business, the overseas business, it gave rise to two holy cities of Makkah and Medina. So Makkah was the place where the Muhammad born, Makkah, born, and Medina was the place where he was died and buried later. So now important thing to notice here is the Islam, it also encouraged the Arab traders to spread Islam. So the Arab traders were not only the traders, not only the businessmen, but they were also the preachers of Islam. So as it happens with the spread of Christianity also in different places. So by this time the Arabs had sort of monopoly on Indian trade with Africa and Europe because of their geographical location, in which we have seen they are close to both India in the east, then the Africa in the west, and then from Mediterranean Sea they can reach the higher parts of Europe. So the Arab traders they started establishing their trading post in the western coastal India, right from the modern day Kerala to Karachi. After the rise of Islam, we see more and more Arabs, they were encouraged to go out and do business and spread Islam. So the Arab trading posts, they started turning into their colonies by 700 AD. These Arabs now, they were Muslims and they were very much marked, and they can be distinguished and different from the majority of people of India. So what we have seen till now is, first thing we saw was about the Persian and the Greek war, the Byzantine and the Sasanians war, which actually disrupted the whole Silk Road. So the land trade and business got suffered. This gave an opportunity to the ocean trade, to the overseas trade, and here the role, the influence, the effect of the Arab, which was based on the geographical location, as they were close to India and then Africa and then Europe. So the influence increased, and there we saw the rise of different commercial towns, and the Makkah and Medina were two of those towns where the Prophet Muhammad was born, and the rise of Islam. Then we saw the Arab traders, they used to come to India for trade, and not vice versa. Not many Indians we find in Arab. So a very important thing to remember is that Islam came to India through Arab traders. Islam came to India through Arab traders. Important point to remember. Okay, now let us move to the Arab invasion of India. The first Arab invasion of India. Here we see a very young man who was hardly 16 or 18, whose name was Muhammad Qasim. He was born in 695 AD, and he died in 715 AD when he was hardly 20 years of age. He was a military officer of his uncle's army, the Arab army, and they were also doing the business with the people of India. Some colonies now, especially in the Sindh, here we see the starting of tussle between the Arab Muslims and the local Hindus. and which is quite obvious as well, because the local Hindus who did not like these Arab, they are coming and taking over not only their trade but also trying to establish their political rule in the country. Now here three things are going on. First, the trade and business, which all creates hostility everywhere in the world. Second, a different race is coming and increasing in a particular area, so naturally the native people they can react. And third is Islam, which changed the Arabs completely. These changed Arab people, now they were Muslims, and they started changing the local society. The untouchables who used to live there in India before, they did not have many economic, political and social role to play in Hindu society. So they accepted Islam. And that is the reason the other Muslims attracted the anger of the local rulers, which resulted in fight. Local Muslims living in India, they did not have anybody else to protect them, so they naturally asked their cousins or their brothers in the Middle East, the Arabs, to come and protect them. So the Caliph that time, the ruler of the Middle East, he sent his nephew Qasim, whom we have studied, Muhammad Qasim, to go and fight against the Hindu rulers, and which he did. In 711 AD, Muhammad Qasim conquered Sindh, and so he spread the Islam in the Sindh region. And but pretty soon actually there were some rivalries in the Middle East, in Arabia, among the ruling dynasties, and Muhammad Qasim was forced to come back and leave behind Sindh. And soon he was killed when he was only 20 years of age. And that is how the Arabs lost southern West India as their colonies or trading posts. And whatever Arabs or Muslim were left there in India, they were pretty soon were converted to Hinduism, and they were Indianized. In modern day Pakistan, the most scholarship they treat Sindh as Babul Islam. What it means is the doorway of Islam, through which Islam entered into the subcontinent. And they also give respect to Qasim, who conquered that area and brought more and more the Muslims and Arabs, and spread Islam. So this was the first attack, the first Arab attack on the subcontinent. Now after Arabs, we see the Turkish and the Afghan people, they would start invading India. Muhammad of Ghazni from 997 to 1030, who was an Turco-Afghan ruler of Ghazni. Ghazni is a place in Afghanistan, and he was a Muslim, and he invaded India for 17 times. Now this is just a sort of introduction for Muhammad Ghazni and Muhammad Ghori, which we would study again when we will start with the Delhi Sultanate period, because it was Muhammad Ghori invasion who actually started the Delhi Sultanate kingdom. So the Muhammad Ghazni, he attacked 17 times, and those attacks, the motives were mostly to get the wealth and slaves of India. But when we see the history of India, which is being written by the Indians, these people were more seen as Muslims than Afghans or Turks. What it means to say is, among some portion of historians, they say it was a Muslim attack, but some historians would say it's an ethnic attack, it's an economic attack, because if we see the region like Afghanistan, which is a place of hunger, that doesn't produce anything except some grapes and apples, but how much we can eat it. But now if we look at India, it's like a heaven if you compare it to the place like Afghanistan. It's not right to consider it as an religious attack, but it has more of the economic background. It is based on the geography of the whole region. If Muhammad Ghazni would have been a Christian, he would have had attacked. If he would have been a Hindu, then also he would have attacked India to get the wealth and the prosperity from there and bring it to Afghanistan. The Muhammad of Ghazni's biggest invasion, it came to India in 1024 AD, where he invaded a place known as Somnath, we all know in Gujarat, which has a temple of Lord Shiva, which he plundered and destroyed, and even destroyed the idol of Shiva. Because he knew it had a lot of wealth. There is a legend, there is a story behind it, which says like the Brahmins of temple told him to take all the wealth, but not to break the Shiva idol. But he said, I will break, as I want to go in the history as a breaker of idol and not as the sailor of the idol. That is, as a Bukht Shikan, but not as Bukht Firoz. This we will study again, and just for the introduction I am telling this story now. But he did that because maybe not of the religion but of the economic part, because he knew that the idol has more money. And religious part is that, like in Islam, it is very much against the statues. Here Mahmud Ghazni, he killed a lot of Brahmins, and he took a lot of prostitutes, a lot of slave girls with him. Now in Afghanistan, he's treated as a local hero, where he brought such a great money. He did so much for the local people, but similarly, if we see the point of view of Indian people, he's more treated like a destroyer. He's more seen like a dacoit who looted the great wealth of our country. So that is how the perception of history changes from region to region and from time to time. After Muhammad Ghazni, we see Muhammad Ghori, who was the ruler of a place named as Ghor in Afghanistan. He also came to India, but he came with some other motivations. He wanted to stay back in India, and it was he who later founded a slave dynasty. Slave dynasty is again an important thing to understand. The slaves in the Islam, or the slaves, the Muslim slaves, it is different from normal slaves. These are the special slaves who would can later marry the daughter of his own master. And these are some of the most trusted people in army whom the king used to trust, the ruler used to trust, and gave them the important responsibilities in the state affairs. So this is some background into Arab trade. We will start again back from Muhammad of Ghazni, and then Muhammad Ghori, and then later we will move into Delhi Sultanate once we will come to that, the Delhi Sultanate part. So this is the first part which we told in the beginning, like we should focus in the early medieval period, the Indo-Arab trade. Now moving further, we will start with the tripartite struggle. As we have seen in the introduction part as well, this was a period which marked the rising of three political powers in India, which were the Gurjara Pratiharas dynasty of the north, the Palas or the Sena dynasty of Bengal, that is Bihar and Bengal of East India, and the Rashtrakutas in South. These all these all dynasties, rulers, they emerged almost at the together at the same time, and they vanished at the same time. Let us start from the Gurjara Pratiharas. Now, here, what is exhibited in the presentation, what you can see on your screen, you have to note down these things, and plus other important things which I would be writing separately. But don't worry about remembering these all parts, because as you have seen in the ancient history mnemonics, how easy it is for us to remember. It would take hardly 2 hours for you to remember each and every point in medieval history, and that thing you would remember for your lifetime if you follow the revision cycles properly. So let us begin. These 3 powers we know. Let us trace briefly the history of the 3 powers that we are mentioning again and again. Starting with the Gurjara Pratiharas dynasty, their literal meaning actually is protector. They were called Gurjaras because their origin was Gujarat. Now this dynasty, it was founded by Nagabhatta I. In the region of Malwa in 18th century, and they belonged to a Rajput clan which were Agnikulin. We will see about the Rajputs, Agnikulin and Suryakulin, Chandrakulin, what actually it means. And these Agnikulin people, they were claimed to be the descendants of the Lord Lakshman of Ramayana. One of the later successors of Nagabhatta I, who founded this Pratihara dynasty, Vatsaraja, was Sivaja. Now he tried to extend his rule over to a large part of North India and made Kannauj in western Uttar Pradesh his capital. This whole fight, fight between 3 regional powers, it was actually aimed at bringing this whole Doab region, or the whole fertile region, and the Kannauj, which we have seen in the Harsha time, it was an imperial capital. It was a sign of imperial power. So whole this fight was to make Kannauj under their control. So this Vatsaraja's policy of expansion brought him in conflict with the Dharampala. He was the Pala king, the northern part, the southern part. If you remember, the Palas. The eastern part, the Palas. So let me draw here. Here we have Pratiharas, and here I have Palas. Here I have Rashtrakutas. So Vatsaraja, Dharmapala, and Dhruva. So, what we studied, Vatsaraja, he tried to expand his kingdom, which brought him in conflict with the Pala king known as Dharmapala, And at the same time, we see a Rashtrakuta king Dhruva who jumped from South India into the fight, and this is what we see the starting of a tripartite struggle among the three powers. This fight, this struggle, it continued for about the next 150 years under the various succeeding kings with ups and downs. The Gujara Pratiharas, we could say, how they could maintain their control, their hold over Kannauj till the last. The one of the most important king of this dynasty was Mihir Bhoja. Mihir Bhoja. And why he is so great? Because Arab traveler by the name of Suleiman, he visited his empire and he used to praise him for keeping his empire safe from the robbers. Suleiman. Traveler. So this is what we are required to know about the Gurjara Pratiharas. It was founded by Nagabhatta I. They claim to be the Agni Kulins, descendants of Lord Lashman, and one of their successors, one of his successor, Vatsvaja, he confined with Palas and Rashtrakutas over his hold of Kannauj. Let us start about the Palas now. The first king was Gopala, and the capital was at Goda, North Bengal. There were two great rulers of this dynasty. One was Dharmapala and one was Devapala. Dharmapala was the one who built Vikramshila Buddhist University monastery. I'm sorry, it's a monastery. Vikramshala Buddhist Monastery in Bhagalpur, Bihar. Now, Devpala, who was the son of Dharmapala, he ascended from Bengal to Punjab. And the Palas, they are said to be the last royal patroners of Buddhism. They were the patrons of the Buddhism, and they are considered as the last political patrons of Buddhism. They sent monks to Tibet as well, and Palas are also known for their patronizing of various arts, sculptures and paintings, which are now popular in the folk traditions of Bihar. Right. So these are the small points, the brief points which we are required to remember for these dynasties, as history is a long part, and we have to be selective when we are studying, especially for the general studies session, not for the optional subject, history as optional subject, but it is for GS, so we are required to learn what is important. Another fact is the Rajshekhar was the famous courtier of Dharmapala, and he was a great Sanskrit poet. Right. Now coming to the Rashtrakutas. Rashtrakutas, the founder was Dandi Durga. Danti Durga. Was the founder, and their capital was Manyakheta, or it is a place near Sholapur in modern day Maharashtra. It was under the King Dhruva that this dynasty reached to its glory. And Dhruva was the first South Indian king who come to the north and defeated a North Indian king. Uh, One of the important kings of Rashtrakuta dynasty was Krishna I. Krishna I, who built the Kailasha temple at Ellora. Temple at Ellora. Ellora is a place near Aurangabad in Maharashtra. We have some Arab accounts which inform us that the Rashtrakutas were quite friendly with the Arab traders who used to visit their empires, and these traders were allowed to build their own mosque and follow their religions without any hindrance. So this tells us that the liberal attitude of the Rashtrakutas kings, but it may also be the desire to draw economic benefits from the growing sea trade which we have seen, which was conducted by the Arabs at that time. Govinda III, he defeated the Nagapattu II of the Pratiharas and established the control of Kannauj and Ganga. And he was the one who built Ellora caves. Now these Ellora caves, it is associated with all three religions, the Hinduism, Jainism and Buddhism, while Ajantas mainly deal with Buddhism. He also built Kailashnath temple caves. This is actually, you have make, please note it, this is actually Krishna I. Right. And another important point is Parsis. They came to India during this period and they were given shelter by the Rashtrakutas. And Parsis that time were used to be persecuted by the Muslims in their native land of Iran. So Parsis came during India during this period. We are going a bit fast here because this whole part, all these remembering part, we would be covering in quite detail in mnemonics also, and these very few things which are required to be logically understand here. So till now, what we have understood is we started from the Indo-Arab trade. We saw the rise of Islam. And then we saw the rise of commercial towns in the Arabian Peninsula. Then Arab used to act as the middlemen. Indians used to produce. Arabs used to trade it to different parts of the world, the Africa or the Europe. Then now Arabs started coming to India and settling down there. They built their trading posts, or soon it converted into their colonies. Then we see in Sindh the tussle between the local rulers and the Arab merchants. And then Muhammad bin Qasim came there to help them. This was regarded as a first Arab invasion in India. After Arabs, we see a coming of Muhammad of Ghazni, then Muhammad of Ghori, Muhammad of Ghor. So that is how the Arab or the invasion from the northwestern side of India from the Turks, Afghans and Arabs started. Then internally we see the rise of three great regional powers which were emerging at that time, which were the Gurjara Pratiharas in the north, the Palas in the eastern side, The Rashtrakutas in the south side. We see the important kings which belong to these three regional powers, plus the reason for fight. It was the Dwab region, it was the Kannauj, the imperial capital of Harshavardhan. Then we will also see in some time from now the nature of their state. Now let us start something with Rajputs, which belong to 8th to 12th century. So the Rajputs, it literally means horse traders. And the most accepted theory about the origin of Rajputs, it was given by the Colonel James Todd in his book Annals and Antiquities of Rajasthan. And according to this theory, he says like Rajputs, they were not indigenous people, but they were foreigners. As we have seen in the ancient histories, the invasion of Hun, Shakyas, the Kushanas, later they settled in India and they became Indianized. Now, since Hindu society is hierarchical, so these all foreigners who were settled in India and became Indianized, they were given the status of Kshatriya caste. Once they were included in the Hindu hierarchical system as a Kshatriya caste, now Kshatriya caste would have two branches. One was originated from the Vedic age, and other would be the Rajputs. Right. So now it's quite natural. The originals can't treat them equally, and these Rajputs, they were called as Patit Kshatriyas. Now, to claim their point that they are not ordinary, Rajputs, they developed various theories for their social acceptance, like Agni Kulin, Surya Kulin, Chandra Kulin. And these stories of their origins are written in Raj Taranginis. There is one legend also which is described in Bhavishya Puran, as you can read on the presentation. The Agni Kulin Rajputs originated from the Yajna which were performed by Vasishtha. There are four different Agni Kulin origins that we find, and different clans of Agni Kulin origins. One are the Pratiharas, what we have studied. Other were the Palmers. Then we have Solankis, Cholankiyas, and Chauhans. The clan of Chandravanshi now linked themselves to Lord Moon, as the name suggests, Chandravanshi. While the Suryavanshi, they claimed to be the descendants of Sun. Chandravanshis, like Chandelas of Madhya Pradesh, they were the Chandravanshis, and they built the famous Khajuraho temples. These all temples, the art, the culture, it's a now very important part of UPSC syllabus if you see the recent pattern. And so we would be covering the whole art and culture of India in a separate module itself. Yes, we would be covering it in our history part as well, but it would be covered in much detail, which very good mnemonics. So within, first would be the conceptual, and again like what we are following for history, and then it would be the mnemonic. So I think within 6 to 7 hours you would be thorough with each and every aspect of art and culture that could be asked in UPSC. Right. So moving ahead with the Rajputs, let us see something about the political system which were prevalent during the Rajputs. This period is considered to be a period of feudalism in India. We will see the meaning of feudalism in some time from now. So the military officers were powerful, and they used to control administration, the right to collect taxes, maintaining the law and order. It was all in the hands of military officers only, so it is quite inevitable that these military officers were very powerful. And this was the time when we see the Rajput kings also claimed that they had divine powers, and there are various legends, and one of them, a king is considered ideal king when he used to attack his neighbor after the Vijayadashmi day, that is the Dashera day. Now, there were some causes of frequent wars. The fertile lands had been given as grant to temples and priests, and they had to fight wars to get more lands by defeating other kings. So, the main cause of war was to have more and more land. And also, a king used to be judged by the number of wars he had won. So, a great king used to win many wars. This was a time where we see many poems which describes the bravery of soldiers, and the martyrs they used were glorified by the poets, and which actually encouraged people to join the army. Let us now come to the society of Rajput kingdoms. So society depends on the economy of a kingdom. It's very obvious. And in the Rajput period, craft and industry had almost declined, and it further led to decline in both external and internal trade and commerce. Uh, so this actually what did is it made villages to become self-sufficient and isolated, and they were not exposed to external circumstances, changes, the progresses, which actually led to the social orthodoxy. And this was a period when we see the strengthening of caste system. The professions which were originally their class now become their caste. Moving ahead to the caste system, we see the existence of four major castes of Hinduism, and we have seen how the Rajputs used to claim that they were not ordinary by taking help of the priest class, and in turn they used to give them huge land grants and donations. So this was a time when these whole rituals in Hindu rituals, it was monopolized by the priest class, and temples and education centers were controlled by priests. Vaishya, which we have seen, the trading class, so this was the class which got the maximum tax burden, and this was also evident from the facts like there were very less number of coins in circulation during this time, and this itself shows the state of economy which were prevalent during that time. Let us come to the Rajput art and architecture. So, Rajput art and architecture, we need to remember some of the major architecture styles they followed and the major temples they constructed. First is the Khajuraho temple. It is present in Chhatarpur district of Madhya Pradesh. These things, as I have told, we would cover in much more detail when we will see the art and culture of India module. So, Khajuraho temple, there are about 25 temples in all there, and these belong to Shiva, Vaishnava and Jain sects. The Khandariya Mahadev temple is the largest monument of Khajuraho. The Pashivnath temple, which is dedicated to first Jain Tirthankar, largest of Jain temples. In Khajuraho, we see the Jain temples at Girnar and Palitana, which was during the rule of Chalukyas. Jain temples at Mount Abu, by the ministers of Solanki rulers, Dilwara Jain temples during the reign of Vimalalaj. Okay, this is a brief about Rajput architecture. We are not going into detail into that now, because these things, as I've told, we would cover in the art and culture of India. Now let us throw some more light on the nature of state during this time. We have seen it was a period based on feudalism. So let us try to understand now what actually this feudalism means. So, nature of state. The state policy during that time, we define it as an decentralized political system. Decentralized system. Now, what is this decentralized political system? It is a system in which there is, of course, a king as a main authority at the top, but he shares his rule over other chiefs, which we call as the feudatories or samantas. Samantas. Now you may wonder, like, who's these Samantas were. Well, the term Samanta, it basically refers to a king who has been defeated, but his kingdom has been restored to him, with the condition that he will continue to accept the overall lordship of the conquering king, and also pay regular tribute to him in cash or maybe in kind. He may also be asked to help with military assistance in needs of time. But these chiefs, they enjoyed freedom of administration over their regions, and so they were quite powerful. Now surely we can guess that these chiefs would always pay a tribute to the overlord, and no wonder whenever there was a weak king at the top, they would assert their independence, which may lead to the breakup of the whole empire. This what precisely happened with the Pratihara's empire, as we have seen. With the end of the Pratiharas, we see the number of Rajput dynasties which prevailed in the North India. So let us see through an example here. Here is a king A who have some big territory. Here is a king B. Say a weak king. Now king A, he thinks of attacking B. Now king B was defeated, or before war only he said, okay, I am giving this battle to you. Now what will happen is, king A doesn't want to rule B because he don't have such manpower to rule B as well. So what he did is, he made again king B the king of this state, but he would say at the time, like, every year you have to give me, suppose, 10 lakh rupees per year, or some other conditions, and in the time of war you have to give me your soldiers. So this is what precisely is the meaning of feudalism or samantas. But suppose now king A is weak. Now king B would think, boss, why I am doing this when I can overrule his rule, and I would assert independence. So when the authority at the center would become weak, the feudals or the small chiefs whom this king A had earlier defeated, they would assert their independence. No, we are independent now. Another aspect of the decentralized policy, it can be characterized by by the practice of making land grants to Brahmins and others. We have seen this practice was first started by Satvahanas. Satvahanas started the practice of giving tax-free lands to Brahmins and priests. But after the Gupta period, it became a normal practice all over the country. And now land grants came to made not only to religious persons and institutions, but also to state officials. And we can have a question now: why did it so happen? Like from religious people, now we have started granting land to the official people as well. Because it is suggested that one of the reasons for the increase in the land grants during this period was the decline in trade and commerce. Therefore, we have shortage of coined money to pay the officials and others for their services. And shortage of coined money, as we have seen, it was right there from the post-Gupta period. Which is indicated by the absence of the presence of coins in the archaeological finds. Now this land which was granted to the Doni, or the person who received the grant, it was tax free. That is, the Doni did not pay any tax to the state, and they used the produce and income on it for their own personal benefit. So these donis, the receiver of grants, they converted these land grants to the independent islands of authority with no or little central control. So we see two aspects here. One is nature of the two aspects for this decentralized policy. Decentralized policy, there are two aspects. First is the feudalism, where King A defeats King B, King C, and in turn asks for certain conditions that they have to fulfill. Second is the land grants. Within his own kingdom, now king would start distributing small patches of lands to both religious and officials. Now soon what will happen is, when these lands are tax free, these small people, they would started having their independent control over these lands, and so the central authority again is started getting weak. So these are some of the nature of the state that used to be prevailed during that time, during the Rajput times, and that is why most of the historians describe it as an dark phase of Indian political history. Now moving further to the South India. Now during this time, we have to study two important powers that time in South India. One is the Pallavas, and second are the Cholas. Pallavas we would study in brief, and Cholas, there were some more important kings associated with Cholas, so we will try to learn it more detail. So starting with the Pallavas, Pallavas stand for creepers, which are the branches of trees, and these were the rulers in South India in modern day Tamil Nadu. The founder of this dynasty was King Vishnu, who had his capital at Kanchi. The two great kings in Pallava dynasty was Mahendravarman and Narasimhavarman. I'm again repeating, you don't worry about what you have to remember. Whatever you need to remember, that we will cover in the mnemonic part. Now you understand the basics or the links of history. Pallavas are more famous for their contribution in the field of temple architecture. So the temple located in Mahabalipuram, which is near Chennai, Tamil Nadu, the famous 8th Rat temple by Narsingh Varman, the Ganesh temple, the Padiri Rat temple, the Draupadi Rat temple, Bhim Rat temple, Arjun Rat temple, Nakul Sakdev temple. There's so many temples which were built by the Pallavas, and these all we will cover in our art and culture of India part, and plus some we will cover in the history mnemonics as well. Now these Pallavas, they started declining in the 8th century AD. Now we come to the Cholas. Now Cholas, they were the feudatories of Pallavas, and they are known for their contribution in the field of administration and architecture. Right. Now if we notice here, these Cholas, these are the contemporary of the North Indian Rajputs. This is the same time, if you notice, 8th and 9th century. But their administration, it was quite different from what we have seen during the Rajput time in North India, the period of decentralization or the period of feudalism. Their capital was in Tanjore. We have already studied in Sangam literature about the Cholas. Now the relationship between these Cholas and the earlier Cholas mentioned in Sangam literature is not clear. But this is clear, like they came to power after overthrowing the Pallavas. They were the feudatories of Pallavas. The two important kings of Chola dynasty were Rajaraja and Rajendra Chola. So Rajaraja 1, actually this is Rajaraja 1 and Rajendra 1, right. King Rajaraja attacked and annexed the northern part of Sri Lanka and Maldives. He built a temple in Tanjore, which is known as the Brihadeshwar temple. It is a very famous temple, and which is the first granite temple in India, is dedicated to Lord Shiva. He also installed his own statue with his wife's statue, which was a unique tradition, which was started and carried on later by the later empires. Now his son, Rajaraja's one son, Rajendra Chola I, he was the greatest king of the Cholas. He annexed the entire Sri Lanka and Lakshadweep island, and he is said to have controlled and conquered all the three seas which are surrounding the India. Actually, it is the Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal and Indian Ocean. So he also attacked, and it is not, he didn't annex the Java and Sumatra. That attack, it was with the purpose to protect the interests of Indian traders. This has been once asked in IAS also. Right. So the Cholas had the strongest navy empires of early medieval India. Some historians call Bay of Bengal as the Cholas Lake. Rajaraja I was the first king of deep South India to attack North India, and he adopted the title of Gangai Konda Chola, and he built a new city which was known as Gangai Konda Cholapuram in Tamil Nadu. So he built a famous temple, Bideshwara and Gangai Chola Kondapuram. He built a lake, Ganga Chola Lake, in the new city. There are some few sculptures also which are famous from this period, and one is the bronze Nataraja temple in dancing form with four hands, which is very famous sculpture, and it has been asked in IAS. They asked how many hands this sculpture had, and it is actually four hands. He is dancing with the four hands. This has been one asked in UPSC prelims. The few things which we are required to remember from Cholas is the two important Chola kings, Rajaraja I and the Rajendra Chola I. Rajaraja I is famous for his temple Bridheshwara, which he built at Tanjore. And his son Rajendra I, he's famous for his strong army. He's the first deep South Indian king who went to the North India and conquered it. He is also known as Gangaikonda Chola, and he also built a city, Gangaikonda Cholapuram in Tamil Nadu. He also attacked Java and Sumatra. Now let us see something about administration of Cholas. We have seen the administration in case of Rajputs, which were the contemporary of the Cholas in North India. Now Cholas, they are famous for a very unique village administration. And these villages were very autonomous in nature with very little interference from the king. In matters of local administration, representatives were elected by people. There are the difference of three types of villages, three types of assemblies that were prevalent at that time. The Ur assembly, which were the assembly of the normal villagers, assembly of villages, assembly of villagers. Second was the Sabha. This is the assembly of Brahmins. And Nagaram, which is the assembly of traders. This has also once been asked in IAS prelims. These are similar to guilds or shirnis that we have studied, if you remember, in ancient history. The union of the merchants, the union of craft persons, the businessmen. Similarly, in South India, Nagaram, these were the assembly of traders. There is one inscription, Uttiramir inscription, which was during the region of King Parantaka. It gives inscription about the Chola administration. This is not important to remember as such by the namesake. According to the inscription, there was an executive council of 30 members, which was further divided into committees. And a representative for each of 30 wards was selected through a system known as a Kodavolai system. Names of the contestants from whom one could be chosen, they were written on the palm leaf tickets, and these palm leaves were put into a pot and shuffled like we normally do in modern time as well. And then a child would ask to pick up a slip, and the member who was chosen was thus elected for the representation of the assembly. Sabha members, there were certain qualifications which they have to meet, like age limit, educations. They should be the landowner, should not be involved in any sin or crime. And after demeeting his office terms of 1 year, he could contest for the next 3 years. Members of central administration were present but did not interfere in the election. Right. So, what is important here now for the Cholas is their village administration. The assemblies which we have seen, the Ur Sabha and the Sabha. So, Ur Sabha is basically, we can say, for the non-Brahmins, while Sabha was for the Brahmins, and Nagaram were the assembly of traders. And we saw these assemblies used to look after the public works, the tax collections, the temple management. And the unique thing is, these are managed or represented by the people who were elected by the village people. And we saw the procedure which is known as the Kodolavole. So this is a unique feature of the Chola administration, as it represents a harmonious balance between the center authority and their local self-government. Now, after Cholas, let us see the cultural developments of the early medieval part. Cultural developments. Now, these new regional kingdoms, it led to the emergence of a new regional cultural zones such as Bihar, the Bengal, Odisha, North Gujarat, Maharashtra in the central India, while in South India we see Andhra, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu. The various art forms, the languages, the literature, etc., that form a most important part of our culture, Indian regional culture today. It took their shape around this period. Most of the languages, such as Bengali, Assamese, Odia, etc., that are spoken in the various parts of India, are some of the examples which this period actually gave us. The rich literature produced in these languages, they began to replace the earlier monopoly of the Sanskrit language. The literary works of the regional languages were often composed under patronage of a new regional rulers. A famous work composed in the regional language around this time under the Cholas were the Tamil version of Ramayana. Ramayana. So Tamil version it was composed by Kampan. Similarly, in Karnataka also Pampa. We saw in Karnataka Pampa. He is considered as a jewel of the Karnataka literature, Kannada literature. He composed, which is popularly known as now as Pampa Bharat in Kannada. In Andhra region also, we saw Naniya translated some portion of Mahabharata in Telugu. Mahabharata. So Telugu Naniya. These all things we would cover in good detail in mnemonics, so don't worry about remembering that of names now. But still we see the position of Sanskrit, it remained important language for the elites. But there are some important works which were composed in Sanskrit during this period. It was the Kathas Sarita Sagar, we have already seen it, the Raj Tarangini and Gita Govind, the three books, Kathas Sat Sahitya, Raj Tarangini. We already know these books, we remembered. Apart from these literature, there was also a great development in the temple architecture during this period. We will see in the art and architecture part the three different architecture techniques. The North Indian style or the Dravida style or the mixture of both styles, it got developed during this period, and we see some beautiful monuments, the famous temples like Lingaraja temple in Bhubaneswar, the Khajuraho temples at Madhya Pradesh, Khajuraho, the Brideshwar temple. These all things again we would cover in the art and culture part of India. Another important thing to remember in this period is the contact with Southeast Asia. After this, we will wind up this complete session now for the conceptual part, because these things I'm going fast because these all are factual informations, and we can anyway cover it in few minutes in our mnemonic session. So as far as the Indian contacts with the South Asia is concerned, it appears to be as old as 5th century BC, where we see the stories of Jatakas, the Buddhist books, if you remember. It refers to like India visiting Swarnadeepa, which is later identified with Java, and such early contacts with Southeast Asia are confined by the recent archaeological finds of pearls and ornaments, the semi-precious stones of Indian origins, from the nearby coastal areas like Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, Java, etc. Now, as far as this Southeast contact, it was largely on this based on the account of trade. Southeast Asia is rich in cardamom, sandalwood, camphor, etc., which formed important items of trade between India and West. Initially, the Indian traders appear to have settled along the coast, but gradually they shifted their network to the interior of these countries. And along the traders, definitely the priests will come, particularly the Buddhists and Brahmins, to meet the ritual requirements of the Indian settlers. It thus created a situation for the spread of Indian social and cultural ideas in the Southeast Asia. But it must be noted here that the Indian contact did not uproot the local culture. It was rather a case of peaceful intermixing of Indian concepts with the local cultural features. Therefore, for example, while Sanskrit was accepted as a language of court and religion in Southeast Asia, the regional languages continued to be used side by side. And thus we find so many inscriptions present there, which is both mixture of Sanskrit and the local language. The most important empire which came to be founded in Southeast Asia in the 8th century AD was the Shailendra Empire. Shailendra Empire. It comprised of Java, Sumatra, present-day Malaysia, that is Malay Plateau Peninsula, and other parts of Southeast Asian region. They were the leading naval power, and on account of their geographical position, they controlled the trade between the China and India, as well as other countries in the West. The Shailendra kings were the followers of Buddhism, and they had close contact with the Indian rulers. One of the kings of this empire built a monastery at Nalanda in 9th century, and at his request the king Pala king Devpala of Bengal granted 5 villages for its upkeep. So during the reign of Devpala, one of the rulers of Shailendra Empire, he built a monastery at Nalanda. Similarly, in the 11th century, another king was permitted by King Rajaraja I to build a Buddhist monastery at Nagapattam on the Tamil coast. The Shailendras, they also built beautiful temple dedicated to Buddha at Baradur in Java. So this was the 9th century. This was the 8th century. 11th century, what happens? Raja 1, he again allowed to build a monastery at Nagapattam. this same Shailendra Empire, it built a temple at Barabudur in Java. It is a Buddha temple. You can find its photos on the internet. It is situated on the top of a hill rock and consists of 9 gradually receding terraces. It looks really fantastic. Besides Buddhism, the worship of Hindus gods such as Vishnu and Shiva was also quite popular in Southeast Asia. The temples dedicated to them have been found at various places. And they show distinct traces of Indian influence and inspiration. One of the most famous temples dedicated to Vishnu is Angkorvat temple, which was built by Surya Varman II, the king of Cambodia. Right, and dedicated to it's in 12th century and by Lord Vishnu. Right, so these two becomes important for us for some point of view. The Barabudur Buddha temple in Java and then Angkor Wat temple built by Suryavarman, this name becomes particularly important, was the king of Cambodia. So this is what we need to know, or what we need to know about the contact with the Southeast Asia, starting with trade. Then we have cultural developments, the mixing of different cultures. The Shailendra Empire in 8th century, who were the followers of Buddhism, they maintained good contacts with the Indian rulers. We saw during the reign of Devpala, the king Devpala of Pala dynasty, and the Rajaraja I of Chola, they allowed to build monasteries at Nalanda and Nagapattam, and similarly the various empires, they built different temples there in Southeast Asia, so it becomes an important part of this period. So here we are winding up this early medieval period, which if we remind, we started from the Indo-Arab trade relations. Let us rewind for 5 minutes. So we started with the Indo-Arab trade. We saw the first Arab attack by Muhammad Qasim. We also saw the Arab merchants at the beaches of Islam. This really becomes an important thing to understand how Islam entered into the subcontinent. Then the Arab attacks started from Muhammad Qasim, then Muhammad Ghazni, who was a Turkish Afghan, and then it continued with Muhammad Ghori. We saw the reason of the increase in Arab influence because of the disruption in the Silk Road, which was because of the war between the Persians and the Greeks. Then we started with the tripartite struggle, and here we saw the 3 great powers: the Pala dynasty of Bengal, the Gujara Pratihara dynasty of Malwa, that is North India, and the Rashtrakutas in South. We saw the name of some important kings: Dharmapala, Devpala. Pala's important thing was the pact; they were the last political patrons of Buddhism. Gujara Pratihara is one of the Rajput dynasties, the important kings. Mihir Bhoja, if you remember, we linked with Suleiman, who praised him, Arab traveler. Rajshekhar, the famous Sanskrit poet of Dharmapala. Then we saw Rashtrakutas, Dhruva and Govinda, 3 were the important kings, where Dhruva was the first South Indian king to come to North and defeat a North Indian king. We see the building of Ellora caves, which we said we would deal in much detail when we'll do the art and culture part of India. And then we started with the Rajputs, some theories about Rajputs, who were actually Rajputs. We saw they were not the indigenous people, but they were the foreigners who invaded India, and then later they became Indianized. And to prove that they are the not ordinary people, they started spreading different theories of their origin, like they were Agni Kulin, Surya Kulin, or Chandra Kulin. We saw some political systems during Rajputs, and we saw it was based on the feudalism. There was constant fighting between them. Rajput architecture, some points we saw, which all temples are important and required to be remembered. But again, I would say these points are required more detailed explanation and presentation, because it's a very important part of UPSC exam these days, art and architecture. So we will try to cover in much more detail when we will deal with art and architecture of India, art and culture of India. Then we saw what actually feudalism means, Samantas mean. And there are two aspects of decentralization. One is feudalism, where one king defeats another king, and other was the land grants. Land grants to either the religious people or to the state officials. Then we started with Pallavas. We saw they are famous for the temple architecture. Some important temples we saw. Then we see the Cholas. The two important, Rajaraja I and Vajin Chola I. Rajaraja I built Vedeshwara temple at Tanjore, which is the first granite temple dedicated to Lord Shiva. And then we saw the Vajendra Chola, who maintained a very fantastic, powerful army. He he attacked Java and Sumatra, and he captured the Sri Lanka and the Lakshadweep part as well. He was given a title of Gangaikonda Chola, as he defeated North Indian king, and he built a new city, Gangaikonda Cholapuram, in Tamil Nadu. Another important thing for the Cholas were the unique village administration system. We saw three different types of village assemblies: Yudh Sabha, Normal Sabha, and Nagara. Yudh Sabha was for the villagers who are non-Brahmins, Sabha was for the Brahmins, and Nagaram was the assembly of traders. And we saw how these members or the represented the chairman maybe of this assemblies, how they were elected. They were elected by a system known as Kodavole system. So people used to select them, and there was a little or very less interference of the central assembly in that, or central administration in that. So they had a very unique local self governance system of Cholas. Okay. So bronze Nataraja was another important thing, which I told you has been asked in IAS once. It's a Lord Shiva dancing with four hands. This thing again we will cover in art and culture part, and plus in medieval mnemonics as well. So here we finish this early medieval part. Next time when we will start with Muhammad of Ghazni, then Muhammad Ghori, and then we will move into the Delhi Sultanate part, which actually is Turkish and then Afghan rule in India. So thanks for now. Wait for our mnemonics lecture on this early medieval history, and it would be a damn easy thing for you then. So goodbye. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you.